desata la agresión armada contra Market, obligando a la conversión de las organizaciones de autodefensa en movimiento guerrillero.
A new political party, born out of decades of conflict, has arrived. The Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia is now the Common Alternative Revolutionary Force. A new FARC with a new symbol.
La rosa significa brazos abiertos para acoger.
The rose means open arms to welcome everyone, and that's why we want all Colombians to be linked to this party. We accept the challenge to change bullets for votes, and here we are. We will enter the political game legitimately, legally.
Under a peace deal forged in Cuba, one for which Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos won the Nobel Peace Prize last year, the FARC has 10 guaranteed seats of the 264 which make up Colombia's Congress. But the group is aiming to gain more in national elections next year. The FARC's transition from a fierce guerrilla force to a political one is not the first such attempt. Peace talks between the government, the FARC, and other guerrilla groups led to the creation of the Patriotic Union Party in the 1980s. But thousands of its members were murdered, many by drug dealers, right-wing paramilitary groups, and members of the incumbent government and army. Now many fear what's past is prologue. Dozens of social leaders, many of them demobilizing members of the FARC, have been assassinated this year. There is still a security vacuum in rural areas where the group holds sway, especially in the south and the east of the country.
This area has been plagued by activities such as drug trafficking, crime, illegal mining, extortion, contraband. And logically, as the FARC leave the area, other agents of criminal activity will try to occupy it.
As the FARC has come further into Colombia's political fold, handing over their weapons and taking a page out of the corporate playbook, with an online campaign to rebrand itself,
FARC. Fuerza Alternativa Revolucionaria del Común.
A divide within the group has surfaced, one part which seeks a broader coalition of the left, and the other rooted in the group's revolutionary past. But there is ample opportunity for the FARC to make political inroads, as its support is a few percentage points higher than Colombia's Congress. And while the FARC grapples to find a new identity, one which aims to be politically palatable to a large swathe of Colombian society, it does have a fresh start ahead of it, along with an opportunity to take on some of Colombia's most trenchant issues, while at the same time not forgetting its roots, those of them and for them, the rural poor. Randolph Nogel, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined from Paris by a former FARC hostage, Ingrid Betancourt. She was kidnapped in 2002 while campaigning for the presidency. Colombian forces rescued her after she was held by the group for 6.5 years. And in San Francisco, we have John Lindsay Poland. He's the co-director of the Fellowship of Reconciliation Colombia program. It's great to have both of you on the program. Ingrid Betancourt, such a pleasure and honor to talk to you. It's been 9 years, more than 9 years, since you were dramatically rescued. Your former captors are changing. They've changed their symbols, rifles for roses. They are rebranding. Do you believe that they are seriously changing as a whole?
Well, of course, I have some reserves, but I hope that their intentions are serious and thorough. I think they have an incredible historic opportunity to change not only their lives and their destiny, but also to help Colombia become the country we are all dreaming about. And even if I have some reserves, I am also very aware that Colombia needs a political force that can speak out for those who have no voice. Colombia is a country that is profoundly divided and profoundly polarized. Today, the people that have a voice are the ones who have means, who have education, who have political power or economical power, but half of the population have not even an ID. They are not even recorded in the civil registry of the country. And those people are exploited, manipulated, they are victims of abuse, there's no justice, there's no law for them. And if I could dream about something, even though I was the victim of the FARC, I would dream of seeing them changing, of course, their rifles for roses, but more than for roses, for ideas, for the engagement, for the to change the destiny of half of Colombians that live in destitution. I'm not sure they will be able to succeed. I think it's a challenge.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you say that. And John, I'm gonna come to you in just a moment. But Ingrid, forgive me for asking. I mean, is this something that you truly only understood, or only truly understood during your time in captivity? Did it take for you to be in the jungle with these people for that long to kind of get why they do what they do? Did you develop a sort of deeper understanding of why they do what they do?
What I'm telling you is the belief I have since I entered politics in Colombia. We launched a party, the Green Party, and the banners of our party at that time was social justice and fairness, and it was it was applied against corruption. I still believe that even if we overcome violence and war, the profound issues that break our society, which are social injustice and corruption, are still there. The thing is that I believe also that the powers in place are part of the problem. And I believe that we need new people in the political arena to bring new ideas, new forces, to break the status quo that we have in Colombia right now. I'm not sure that the FARC are the ones that can do that, but I really believe that there's a representation that needs a voice. The left in Colombia, the political left in Colombia is very frail. Colombians are not satisfied with what the FARC as a guerrilla did in the country because of the violence. Colombia is a very spiritual and Catholic country. Atheism, communist atheism is something that is uncomfortable for many Colombians. But if we put aside all this, I think that the FARC, because of the struggle of nearly 60 years, they have the legitimacy to speak for those who have nothing.
Right. John, let me ask you about...
And be credible.
Yeah, and that's interesting. John, do you believe that the FARC can be credible? Many Colombians, it seems, more than half, don't trust Rodrigo Londoño, the man they call Timochenko. They're skeptical, of course. You know, wounds are raw for many, many people. Do you think that they can be a credible political force as they inject themselves into the political sphere?
Well, I think they face many of the same challenges that all political leaders in Colombia encounter, which is that there's very little trust in political leadership in Colombia because As Ms. Betancourt pointed out, the majority have been abandoned by the political process. So those leaders are not seen as credible unless they can really bring changes. And so this is not just an opportunity for the FARC as a political party, it's an opportunity for all sectors in Colombia to overcome the divisions and to address the structural inequalities that Colombia has suffered from for many, many decades. And I would add that it's an opportunity for the international community, which has often fed the conflict and inequality through certain kinds of investment as well as through military involvement. I'm speaking particularly about the United States. So it's an opportunity internationally, because in the past, as the intro noted, the processes have been met with more repression, and we are seeing that now. You know, both members of the FARC in this year and their family members being killed, as well as social leaders in areas where the FARC was active and where social leaders and communities are challenging forces of narco-traffickers, of landowners, and are also being met with violence. So there's an opportunity not just for the FARC, but it does depend on what the process as well as individual parties within that process can really produce in terms of concrete change.
Yeah, Ingrid Betancourt, is that a fear of yours that as the FARC, who may have been brutal for a long, long time, but they amassed a lot of rural support, as they sort of get mainstreamed and go into the urban political sphere, you still have this vacuum in the rural areas amongst the rural poor? We saw the ELN recently caused some trouble. There's a group called the AGC I was reading about that runs a big chunk of the cocaine trade. Are we going to see more and more of these other groups try to fill this gap?
Well, it's a possibility. It's an opportunity for them. The vacuum is there. There's no one to fill that vacuum yet. I'm not sure if the actual commanders are the ones that are able to interpret the will of the destitutes. One of the things that I look from afar with some worry is the language they're using. I think that it's sometimes I feel that there is a sort of arrogance, some sort of haughtiness in the way they speak that is not favorable for uniting and gathering around them. You see, Colombians are a people of, it's a population of humble, working, good people, of people that have been abused for centuries. And they, even if the level of education is low, the intelligence is amazing. It's people very bright and with a capacity of human relation analysis very high. So they are observing. And if they see that these people are just getting into the system and playing with the same rules as the ones that have betrayed them, if they see that they become arrogant, if they forget them, if they want to be rich, if they want to have nice houses and live a comfortable life, forgetting the problems of the majority of Colombians, they will be abandoned. The vacuum will still be there. So you know, I think that this is kind of you have to be devoted to the cause. And what I'm just, you know, worried about is to see that for some signals that I have just been catching as I see them evolving and expressing themselves, I wish that they are not going to turn themselves into part of this corrupted, exclusive kind of club that Colombian politics is. Politics in Colombia are difficult because it's an arena, it's a space where all the ones who have power want to be there. And in Colombia, people with power are linked, not all, of course, it's not a majority, but I would say that the presence of paramilitary, of drug dealers, is still a problem in politics in Colombia.
Yep.
And so we will see how they turn.
Yeah. John, you know, people are extremely skeptical. A lot of people were skeptical last year when President Santos put this to a vote. Eventually, he just went to Congress when people said no. But someone who voted no was featured in a New York Times piece very recently. It was a piece about the Pope in Bogota. Her name was Helen Gonzalez. Her nephew had his leg blown off by the FARC. And she said, you know, the Pope may forgive them, but in my heart, I don't forgive them. I am still reconciling it all. And you know, a lot of people like Helena Gonzalez, they want peace, but they also want a semblance of justice when they think of the violence. More than 220,000 people died. People have these long memories. John, is that going to be very hard for the FARC to reconcile themselves? Are they going to find it increasingly hard to win over people like Helena Gonzalez to say, look, we want to move on, we want to be a part of this process. We need you to accept that you might not get full justice for the peace that's on offer?
Well, of course, the FARC will never win over some people who were harmed by their actions. Although I would point out that in the referendum, which on the peace accords, which lost by a razor-thin margin, that the areas that were most heavily impacted by the war voted more proportionately in favor of the peace accords. So I don't think that her opinion is universal. I think, you know, it's also important to point out that the seats that the FARC is guaranteed by the peace accords, a little less than 5% of the congressional seats, are transitory. So if they don't win people's favor, if they don't make accomplishments, if they don't achieve some kind of land distribution and justice for violence in the countryside, they won't be voted back in.
Right.
They will become an irrelevant force. And so I think that's also important to note, and it really does depend on what they're able to achieve on those structural issues, which they have to achieve in alliance with other sectors in Colombia. They can't do it with a 5% in the Congress. They can't do it alone.
Yeah, that's a very important point. Let me ask you, Ingrid Betancourt, very finally, because you understand them better than most. You lived among them against your will. They held you as a hostage. They were in the jungles for half a century. They waged a violent, bloody war against the state. They did some unspeakable things. Now, as they go into politics, now as they become a part of the political system, from their perspective, from the FARC's perspective, would they consider all of this 50 years on worth it? Would they say, yes, we've achieved our goals? Or would they consider this current situation as a compromise and maybe a failure?
That's a good question. I would say that they have to convince themselves that it's a victory, but the victory won't be a victory unless they achieve through democratic means what they couldn't achieve through violent means. And only history will tell us if it's really a victory or not.
Ingrid Betancourt, John Lindsay Poland, it's been a pleasure talking to both of you. It's been thoughtful and I've learned a lot. Thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmakers.